Welcome to the Relational Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Thompson, joined by my co-host, Austin Hill. Today we're talking about gratitude and thankfulness, which is, I believe, a timely topic for the Christmas season, which this was recorded in. But obviously, if you're listening at a different time, one thing our soul always needs is to cultivate more gratitude and thankfulness. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Well, hey again, Austin.
Hi again, Wes. Let's do this.
We've tried to record this once already, but we lost the recording because the internet's decided to rob us of our joy. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to have to practice some gratitude and thankfulness right now and not just focus on the pain of having to do this again. I planned on ending here, but since we just had a short conversation about this and are now having it again, maybe we can start where I planned on ending it. Today we want to talk about gratitude and thankfulness, which is a principle at the Refuge where you and I both work. We both do ministry. And gratitude and thankfulness is a powerful thing to practice. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, especially, one thing we mentioned earlier was it's, this time of Thanksgiving, this time of Christmas, where as we're recording now, it's December 18th, or a week from Christmas. It's the end of the year. It's just, for me at least, it's always a reflective time of the year. I think about family. I think about how the previous year's gone. So right now I'm reflecting on 24. I'm thinking about 25. And it's just, when I start to get reflective, I start to think about the challenges, but I inevitably begin to think about, the things that I'm grateful for. And so gratitude and thankfulness is a powerful thing to practice. I'm curious to start out, might be good for anyone listening to begin to cultivate that. Think about, what are you grateful for? Who are you grateful for? But I don't know, I'm curious, where does your head go right now as we think about that, Austin? What are you grateful for? Who are you grateful for?
So I think working with a team of people that are seeking to solve a problem bigger than ourselves. So those are things that I'm always grateful for. It's whether it is the people here at the Refuge, or if it's my wife and I raising our kids, or my wife and I working to have a strong marriage. That's something bigger than ourselves that leaves an impact on the people around us. So it's those things are selfless acts when we're doing it for the right reasons, or when we're focused on the right reasons in what we do. And at the same time, the act of being grateful for something is acknowledging that we have something that someone else doesn't. And I don't think that should downplay it. So to be grateful for a really healthy marriage means that I know that I could have a really bad one, or I know people who have bad ones. And I think what we need to be aware of with working to be grateful is it's not a comparison, even though that's kind of what I started this out with. It's not comparing yourself with other people. It's being humble enough to identify, these are the things that have uniquely been given to me, that have been uniquely placed in my life. And I need to cherish that present moment. So you and I both have kids. Mine are getting older than yours. My oldest is in college. And so she's home for the holidays.
You're just super old now.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm doing well. We just paid. Yeah, never mind. But it's
sorry. I derailed
it's okay. It's all right. But it's cherishing those moments that are short with your kids together. And so it's not I am not comparing. So when I am when my kids are all together, when my girls are together and they're just making a lot of noise just by being with each other, and there's mild chaos happening all the time. It's like a whirlwind. It's being grateful for that moment, because in a couple of hours, a couple of weeks, it's going to be quiet again. and I get to remember what it was like and be grateful for that moment. But instead of, I think we can miss those things that are presently happening in our lives that are just beautiful because we're afraid it's going to end. But it's always going to end. So be grateful for the current moment that you're in and the beautiful thing that's happening around you. So like the guys in the refuge, yeah, you might not be with your families right now, but you're with a group of guys that actually care about you. The men in the refuge have something that I think it's a ridiculous stat. 1 out of 3 men in the U.S. don't have a close friend. So the men of the refuge have something that a third of American men don't have: close friends. And it's like, we talk like this is something that it's tongue in cheek, but it's very true. Everyone talks about, like, as Christians, we always focus on the miracles of Jesus. But like I think one of the biggest miracles, if we're looking at with modern eyes, is that he had 12 close friends for a long period of time. Like, that's nuts. So like what we have here at the refuge, and like you and I are on staff here, so we have like this built-in bonus of we have friends who care about the same thing. We are doing something in service bigger than ourselves. There's a lot to be grateful for, even though it's not perfect. Like, we deal with heavy, painful stuff, but there's things in what we do that we can always be grateful for. And being grateful doesn't mean ignoring the crazy. It's acknowledging the pain and suffering, but also acknowledging the good, like the actual beautiful things that are happening.
Mm-hmm. That's good. The last time we did a live podcast, we talked about Christmas in relation to like light and darkness. And I've heard a lot of people in this season talk about acknowledging the people that really struggle this time of year, which I get it is important. But I think I want to look at it from a different angle today, because we all are going through painful things all the time. Sometimes people are going through like really, think about like the worst things, right? Like a child dying or terminal illness or whatever comes to mind for anybody to think about worse. But then there's also like, I think we tend to compare pain. So, we diminish the smaller pains, but like we're all going through pain most of the time. And I think that gratitude and thankfulness is a good, like we were talking about earlier, just a good antidote to that. Because if that's true, right? If there's always painful things happening, then I think the contrast is also true. There's always good happening as well. Unfortunately, our brains tend to gravitate towards the bad and not the good. You might be one of the unique people that I know that maybe have a more glass half full approach to life, which is good and rare, because I think, studies show, all it takes is to look at the news. And I know that's become a cliche thing to say, but genuinely, the news wouldn't show negative things if negative things didn't sell. There's a preoccupation, I think, with our psychology that we gravitate towards. Chet Scott says, we gravitate towards the gross and not the good. And I think gratitude and thankfulness is an invitation that even in our pain, we can recognize the good, because there's always good. There's always good. And I think for a lot of us, sometimes, I remember my worst moments in my life. There's been particularly difficult ones in the last 5 or 6 years. And I just remember in those moments, especially when I look back at my journals, like I think I was really struggling with a perspective that said like, nothing's good right now. Nothing's good right now, which wasn't true. But often we find ourselves feeling that way. And that can be really hard. And practicing gratitude and thankfulness is an invitation to say, hey, even when things are hard, I'm not going to diminish the hard things. I'm not going to ignore the hard things. But it's, can I acknowledge the good too? Can I acknowledge the good too? And in acknowledging the good, it often it often, I think, wells up within us. Um, Motivation, strength, courage. It's kind of like fuel to be able to endure um, even the challenging times. And and then when things are good, it's amazing how we'll make it bad by finding the one bad thing. But it's like kind of what you said earlier. Like, how can we stay present in those good moments and just enjoy them? Because you're right. Like, all things do end. I mean, time for us works in a linear fashion, um, which means like we're getting older. We're one day moves to the next, one year moves to the next. But that doesn't mean we should lament that. It means like how can we be grateful for the time that we have? How can we be thankful for the people in our lives? How can we instead of worrying about when you think about like chronic anxiety, how instead of worrying about what the bad things that might happen to our loved ones, can we just appreciate the opportunities and time that we have? Because that's what we can control. Um, but I also recognize it's tough. It takes practice because I myself struggle in that area.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of good points where I think we sometimes look at what gratitude and thankfulness is only looking, it's like it has to be positive. It doesn't. It has to be true. That's what you can be thankful for. This sounds, yeah, I think and when you're going through it, like when you're going through um, a break, like a breaking of a relationship, like if you're a guy in the refuge and you're thinking about like, hey, I'm repairing this relationship with my family, the only reason you're able to experience the joy and peace of restoring that relationship, of rebuilding that one, is because before it was broken. You, like somebody in the past broke that relationship. That's painful. So in a weird way, we have to be thankful for the breaking, the pain, because if it wasn't for the pain, I wouldn't be able to experience the grace. So being grateful, that means to be grateful means to acknowledge that we are complex people. We live complex, rich lives that come with pain and suffering and joy and celebration. Because you can't celebrate something unless like unless it was kind of like mediocre at the like a team, like if a team wins something and they're celebrating, the other team lost, like those are both true. And that team that lost can be grateful that they were in the game because they got there. And so it's being like an attitude of thankfulness and gratitude is being honest and humble enough to know that like this is a gift. Like where I am is a gift. Parts of it may really suck. And that's just life. And that's not to be flippant with the pain, but we can't ignore the pain or try to seek out a life where there is no pain, because that's not a life worth living. Like I know it sounds weird, but like it's like we don't want lives that are painless. That's numb. That means numb. You don't feel anything. You don't feel good or bad. That's a painless life. That's not worth living.
Well, we don't grow without a measure of pain. But when you were talking, it reminded me there's a song where this writer, like he said, the shadow proves the sunshine in one of the lyrics, and it's an artistic way of saying, it's what you were alluding to. Like you don't know that there's light without first being in darkness. You don't know that there's darkness without first being in the light. In other words, you don't know that things are bad unless you were in a good place. You don't know bad. You don't know good unless you were in a bad place. And so if everything was good all the time, we wouldn't have a contrast to it. We wouldn't have something to compare it to. So the fact that we have good and bad, hard and easier in our lives allows us to appreciate when things are good and to learn and grow when things aren't as easy and good. And I think that's that's the invitation for all of us, that we can exhibit, like you said, we can exhibit gratitude and thankfulness in the good and in the bad. Um, it's both and it's definitely harder to do that in the bad. But I think one thing that I've been learning quite acutely lately, and I don't want to go through bad things. I'll be honest. Like, I don't think any of us do. But when I reflect on my life, um, I've learned most deeply going through the tough moments of life. I've learned more, like when I've done my life map, and then and Built to Lead. There's a similar exercise called the Builder's Journey. And when I've done those exercises, I've realized, wow, because like Andrew asked me recently, one of the guys that coaches me, and he's like, as I was like kind of going through the chronology of my life, he's like, at what points did you learn the most, in the peaks or in the valleys? And I looked at like my life chart thing, and I was like, wow, I learned most in the valleys, which is kind of an interesting takeaway. And I guess the reason I bring it up now is when we're in the valleys, it's easy to just focus on that pain, but there's still a lot to be grateful for and thankful for in those valleys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this the balancing or the tension that we talk about with gratitude and thankfulness. It's it again, it is not dismissing or ignoring the pain. It's always acknowledging it. And it's always acknowledging like the gifts and grace that were shown in the pain, or acknowledge like, 'cause here we'll use like when we're in those valleys, there's people around us that helped us get through that, and we can be grateful for them. Like we wouldn't know really who our true friends are if we didn't have those moments. We would like those things reveal who care about us. They reveal they often reveal who we are, the truer version of ourselves. And then we have to acknowledge, like, then we have to respond and acknowledge that, like, man, I don't like that part. Or like, I wasn't really happy with how I handled that. I want to do different. I want to learn. I want to do different next time. That's like, we have to be able to step back when we're in those seasons of nothing is going right in my life. We have to pause and know it's a season. It really sucks, but it's a season. This too shall pass. And what do we want to learn from that season? And I think gratitude and thankfulness are super easy when things are going great.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So we're practicing these things for when crap does hit the fan, because crap is going to hit the fan. We're not going to build a life where it doesn't happen. So how do we want to respond when crap hits the fan in our lives? That's what we're preparing for. That's what those tools are for in life, is to be grateful and thankful in every present part of our life.
Yeah, and I think a thing probably worth noting, that we were talking about earlier is, as I was reflecting on this, just remembering, and I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and one idea that really stuck out in my head was just, it's really sad and troubling, and this is true for all of us, include myself included, but like pain, like when we're in pain, we're pretty self-absorbed usually. It takes I think a really somebody who's done a lot of work to be able to stay self-aware when they're in pain, because when we're in pain, people are typically really selfish, because when we're in pain, I was just about to make like a visual example, but I realized most people are going to listen to this. So, but it's like our perspective. It's like all we can see is the pain that's right in front of us. And so, what tends to happen is when we're struggling, all we can focus on is ourselves. That's why when you think about your life, right? Maybe you're going to think about yourself, but it's easier often to think about others than look in the mirror. But like when I'm going through something hard, when I'm feeling pain, I remember like back in 2018 when I was going through my toughs, it was really hard to empathize and sympathize with people because I was so overwhelmed with my own crap. Like other people really started to exhaust me because I was struggling. And I think that's true. It's like when we're in pain and we don't know how to get out of it. Um, it can just be this place of self-absorption. And one of the points I made earlier was like, I think one of the reasons people in addiction are often touted as selfish is because it's a condition that becomes self-absorbing. I can only see myself. I can only focus on my own needs. I can only see my own pain. I can only see what my body's craving for. And this complicates the issues because pain. I think where I really get frustrated with the evil in this world is pain tends to beget more pain. I think that's where the enemy wants to get us is like, if all we focus on is our pain, it's kind of like we're then, I think we're then volatile to just continue to make behavior that's self-sabotaging. And we kind of winds us down into this ever deepening pit. And I think one of the ways out is to cultivate gratitude and thankfulness, which on the surface is really just beginning to notice the other people and the things around you that are good, to get eyes off of self and focus on others. We've caveated this to death. As you've said numerous times, that's not to say we ignore our pain or diminish our pain. It's just to say, again, going back to what we said earlier, anytime there's good, there's also going to be struggle. But anytime there's struggle and pain, there's also good. And as we grow in more health, we've got to better recognize that those two are always existing. And yeah, it's a spectrum. There's going to be days and seasons where it's more good than it is bad, or there's going to be seasons where it feels like there's more bad than there's good. But it's important to recognize that both are always happening simultaneously. And gratitude and thankfulness are an invitation to focus on the good, knowing that we tend to gravitate towards the gross.
You mentioned something about like when you see someone who handles pain well or who can practice gratitude and thankfulness within pain, who does it appropriately, that acknowledges the pain, but is also still grateful in their present moment. That takes practice and time. And it's I think this is a fact of, like you mentioned earlier, like we live linear lives. So like I'm only going to be this old today. I'm going to be older tomorrow. I was younger yesterday. And so I get to decide how I want to age with my relationship to suffering, to pain, and in turn with gratitude and thankfulness. So I can either choose to not ignore my pain and suffering, learn from it, and get accustomed to seeing it, acknowledging it, and then responding. And then I can get better and better at being present when things do go sideways and handle them well. And then be there for other people when they're going through crap. So it is it's like this, it sounds almost like a catch-22 by like, if I can be healthy, then I can help other people be healthy too. And then they can help other people be healthy. But I have to be healthy first, which sounds selfish and self-centered, but it is so that I can serve other people. So being grateful and acknowledging the good things in my life isn't selfish when it allows me to serve other people. So we get to choose this. We're always going to be getting older. And like starting at the beginning of this kind of thought, the people who really handle pain well, who are good at practicing this attitude of thankfulness, have gone through a lot of pain. And like this weird gift is like life is full of pain. So we get to decide, we get to choose if we want to get better at dealing with pain or worse. Do we want to be someone that someone isn't afraid to tell us something or to share a deep wound with? Because this person is able to hold my story and help me heal from it. Or do I want to be someone who like, oh, don't tell them anything difficult because they'll just lose it. that they aren't dependable in pain because they don't know how to deal with their own pain. So that is the gift of, that is like the gift that I think guys in the refuge have. They have experienced immense pain. They've experienced immense, like, things that just don't make sense. You write us, like, if any guy who's in the refuge wrote a book about his life leading up to the refuge, most people would be like, couldn't do it, would not be able to handle that. Like, that's just the response that most people are going to get. It's like, that happened to you and you're still standing? Holy crap. I don't think I'd be here. Hearing some of the stories, like, I don't think I'd be here. I don't know if I could physically handle it. But so what I'm saying is, like, the pain that guys have experienced in their past, the pain that you have experienced in your past, is a gift for you to decide. What do I want to learn from it? How am I grateful for the things that I am learning? How am I going to be thankful for what is presently here so that I can be this strong, solid person who knows that I am loved despite how messed up I am, so that I can now love others more fully? That's the outflowing of gratitude and thankfulness. It's so that I can experience, so I can receive and give love to others. Because that's what we want. We want that. That's what it means to be known by somebody, is to be loved by somebody for who we truly are, and then to love someone else for who they truly are. And we can't do that without experiencing pain.
Amen, brother. Well, to bring this to a close, I think what you just said is really well said. I think I would encourage us and anyone listening to practice what Austin's saying. And maybe a first good step, especially given the season we're in, is wherever you are, maybe you acknowledge a burden that you're carrying or a pain that you're carrying. I mean, kind of the same thing there. But then after that'll probably come quick, if you're anything like me. But then quickly move to, what am I grateful for in this season? Who am I grateful for? But then to go a step further to cultivate that love that Austin was talking about, and like tell somebody that you're, like, when you think of who you're grateful for, those people that come to mind or that person that comes to mind, I think it's a great time of the year to tell them. So I hope everyone has a great Christmas, and I hope that by reflecting on gratitude and thankfulness and sharing it with others, that you find a bit more peace and joy in this wonderful time of year. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Relational Recovery Podcast. We'll be back soon with a new conversation. We'll see you then.